5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, everyone, welcome back. I'm Zach.
I'm Calvin.
And here we're back on Tangentially Related Podcast, where now we're going to talk about TV shows, maybe also movies, depending on how we diverge into it. And the reason why I want to kind of talk about it is because we talked about a little bit about like our previous experience back as kids, right? We're talking about phones. And I started thinking like, wait, what's something else that really changed a lot? And that was a lot of like streaming services and such. And I want to talk a little bit about shows that were on like major networks that are, that, you know, we see that sometimes it would be just on like, oh, you always have to watch it at this day of time, at this day of week to make sure it was gone through.
That was Dragon Ball for me, actually.
Exactly. Yeah, and then we'll talk about anime as well. And then how everything kind of went over into streaming services to be more convenient, and also because it was really cheap at the time. And then how there's now all these different streaming services going along, and how some people don't like it, some people do like it. And then also about anime specifically, because I know that's something that you watch as well. I think we both can connect with, and how I think we have disagreeing opinions on this. But first, I want to get your idea about TV shows back then. So, did you watch a lot of TV shows when you were young? Or
I watched like the usual stuff, right? So I watched like SpongeBob. I watched like the Family Channel a lot, like all stuff on that. Like SpongeBob. And then when I got a little bit into like my teens, it was like How I Met Your Mother, which by the way I think is probably the most influential like show I've ever watched for like my own personal life.
Really?
But that's a rant for another time.
I saw so many of my friends got into it.
We can start with that.
I want to say because that's one show that I did watch for a little bit, and I just didn't like it. I did not like it at all.
So the thing is, what it speaks out to me as is good narrative. We'll put it that way, because the way no. Listen.
Sorry, I just gave him like a what are you talking about?
Yeah, listen. There's good technical narrative, and then there's good execution of it, right? So on a technical point, it hits a lot of points.
Okay.
On execution, that's like taste, right?
Okay.
So hear me out. Okay? So what it does well is it uses a lot of like literary techniques, and it is very empathetic. And so it hits like the crowd that it's targeting very well, in the sense that like every episode has like this like funny type, like the pineapples and all that weird stuff, right?
Okay.
And all because it is written retrospectively and told retrospectively, it allows for a lot of very interesting like technical things to be talked about and gone into, because this is all stuff that has already happened. You talk about it in the past, and so there's this element of foreshadowing that is involved. There's this element of trying to I guess kind of like decipher the situation kind of in hindsight, and then there's like you being in the present though and all that stuff, and so there's a whole bunch of different elements of irony that can be involved. So on a technical point of view, it's very interesting to think about it in that way, and again, because like I'm a hopeless diehard romantic, it hit all the right buttons for me.
God, you probably resonated so much with Ted. Like,
yes,
oh my
unbelievably,
God.
Yes.
Like, I don't know. I watched it. Fun thing, I didn't watch the season finale, but I heard that they just fumbled like the last season or something like that.
That's a conversation we'll go into later.
Okay. But no, I just watched it. I just didn't like. For one thing, I didn't really like the whole retrospective part of it, and the whole reason was because if it was a very short episode, like very short like length of series,
that became the meme though, that it was just so long-winded.
I know. Oh my God. Like I just didn't like that part of it. And then it was just an inner group of friends just going through like different things. Like, you know, there's the slap rule. Barney never really.
He never looked bad in pictures, never explained what his job was. Yeah. The running jokes.
I think I just didn't like that part of it. And then, you know, as much as like that probably was a very trope for that kind of sitcom-y
yes, it is.
show, I just never really resonated with stuff like that. It's why I only liked a similar show like that is not a similar show like How I Met Your Mother, but similar in like how they sort of approach it is Modern Family.
I never watched that. No.
So Modern Family was a office style like show where it's, you know, there's no laugh track, and the idea is that everyone has like their fourth wall breaks where they either look at the camera or they talk to the camera to give like, you know, their insight on what's going on in the situation, right? And I watched like the first couple of seasons. I think I watched like the first season. I thought it was okay, but I got really bored with it. And I remember why I got bored with it. is because every freaking episode had to be a talking point. So the way it would run, it was run into like like the main story and then one or two side stories, and they all come together at the end for the big telling of a tale, or telling of like, how to learn, a growth moment.
Sure.
And it was every single episode. And when there's 25 something episodes in a season and it runs for 9 seasons, I'm like, I'm done with this. Like it's just going on way too far along. And if that's what you say, that How Much Your Mother was sort of like, where at the end of each episode was kind of like a growing moment, I'm like, I would get bored of that.
Yes and no.
Like the first season.
Yes and no. It's again, like the technical points it hits is very good. And again, someone's gonna come out and just like butcher me about, technical this, that, whatever. Quiet. Like it's, when you try to break it down analytically, it's very interesting to talk about it, and that's again very good. But like the flavor of everything and all the jokes and stuff is, again, not everyone's cup of tea, right? So you mentioned that like, there's always like running jokes and stuff, like slap band and all that stuff, right? Okay. So as a literary tool, like the story is set around a group of friends. Yeah. And so what a lot of friends have are these running jokes. Okay. And so trying to loop the audience into this is kind of like grouping the audience kind of like within that group of friends. And so it's a bit more of like an endearing thing, and it's something that will, help you be more engaged with that group. And so that's, again, from a technical point, that's good. From a very like someone watching it trying to enjoy it, I mean, if you think the slap bet is silly, like, well, why is someone getting slapped or whatever, it's bad. All right, so it depends.
And the reason why I didn't like that specific point of it is because I remember that it was just brought up all of a sudden in this episode, and then they had to stop the episode halfway through to explain where it came from, and then I don't think they ever really brought it up again.
They did actually in the last season.
Oh, they did? And yeah, yes. In the last season, because they know what's wrapping up, so they got to do all this loose ends.
But that's another thing that I thought, again, good technical point of view, in the sense that like almost, so there's different ways you can approach a story, right? So there's, and I think it was George R. Martin or whoever who kind of like made this quote a bit more famous. Okay. But the idea is that there's the architect and there's the wanderer. Okay. When you have a story, you can either be the architect and you know how everything is kind of like put together before you write it. Okay. You just kind of like effectively have a very, very, very thorough plan, and now you can map out your technical points very well because now you know where everything's going. Okay. On the other hand, you have the wanderer who's just like, well, that sounds like a cool idea, and they just go.
You know what? That I sometimes experience that when I write D&D stories, because what I get into this position where do you just give people context? I'm finishing. I think I have like one more session before the end of my campaign. It's like 40 long. It was like 40 sessions long, 2 years running.
Holy crap!
Going. Yeah, I know. It's like, and this is like the very first campaign with people who've never played D&D before. So I'm like, man, Lord, I really should have just done a one shot before this. Right?
should have just one shot it, man.
But listen, they really loved it. Okay, like it got so emotional because one character died and someone almost cried.
Oh
so
my
that's
God.
the kind of emotion I was trying. So I was kind of proud of that. That was driving that emotion. And I try to be and go back to your architect versus wanderer example. I tried to do the architect at the very beginning, where I was trying to lay things out. And it just didn't work out too much.
You need to have a lot of technical training to be able to be a good architect.
Yeah.
Right? Both as an actual architect and story architect.
And with D&D, it's really tough because especially with like...
Because there's randomness to it as well, right? In D&D.
Yeah, the wandering part of it, which what I had to get more and more used to, was that because I'm with actual people who aren't going off of a script or just doing whatever they kind of want. Like, they are still respecting my idea, like, oh, they want the story to continue, but that's also because I'm giving them reason to continue the story, right? So, back to your whole example of the whole architect and that, I think most shows, like How I Met Your Mother, Modern Family, things like that, they start off the first 3 seasons. Actually, I would say the first season, to be more conservative about it, is always starts off in an architect point of view.
Yeah, because you have to pitch it to a network and they have to take it.
But then that's why usually the first 4 seasons of almost any show is always like usually the best ones, and then anything after that, it's just downhill. Because I think at that point, writers and directors and producers just run out of ideas.
I don't necessarily fully agree, because here's the interesting thing about being a wandering architect. We'll put it that way. Okay. Right? The interesting thing about being a wandering architect is if you know the beginning and you know the end, for example, but everything in the middle is you wander, all right, then you introduce more elements of being, how do I put it? We'll meme it. Being big brain 500 IQ. Here's the thing. So I'm swing it back to anime and manga. So you've definitely at least heard of Death Note, right? Did you watch Death Note?
I did not watch Death Note. I know what most of the time happens.
Sure. Basically, I'm super smart, the edgy teen, the anime, right?
Yeah,
So
exactly. Yeah.
ignore that. The reason I bring up Death Note is I think the author is such a good architect.
Really? Okay.
Yes, because he has a very signature style of trying to make the most mundane things interesting, and how he can introduce different elements, and he's very strong technically.
I know the potato chip scene.
God. No, so I'm not talking about Death Note.
Okay.
That was, in my opinion, not his best work.
Really? Okay.
But that is his most publicized because everyone was an edgy teenager at the time, so they loved it.
Yeah.
No, I'm going to butcher the pronunciation. But Bakuman, one of his follow-up series, much later down the line. So it is a manga that got an anime adaptation later. I never watched the anime, but the manga was reasonably good. Actually, I would rate it in my like top 10 for sure.
Okay.
So it is a manga about writing manga.
Really? Okay.
Yes. It follows basically these two teenagers who decide, screw it, I'm gonna write some manga. And because he himself is a very established manga writer, mangaka I think is like the proper like title for it or job or whatever. Mm-hmm. He actually walks the reader through a whole bunch of different steps of what it's like to be a mangaka and explaining the process in a very interesting way that's wrapped around a story. Okay. And so it actually helps someone learn how to decipher stories and what goes into it, why not necessarily the best stories are chosen, why not necessarily the best mangas are like the strongest technically or all that. Okay. And like there's just different ways to describe it. And in it, one of the things that sticks with me to this day is the idea that the wandering architect has the best opportunities to fully wrap up a story.
And you know what? I agree with you on that, because I'm going to give you a North American example, Rick and Morty. So, no, as much as you sound like, why is Rick and Morty? It's such a dumb show. I learned that the writers and the producers don't have, like, when they create an episode, they don't have a necessary end for it immediately. They actually, like, sometimes they'll go into future episodes calling back something that happened 2 seasons prior to, and then wrap it up later on then. Like, so they will, what you talk about is like the wandering architect, is that they will create an idea. They'll be like, all right, this is a cool idea. Let's just make an episode for it, leave it off on a cliffhanger, leave it off somewhere else. And then they'll come back to like 2-3 seasons later, like, yeah, okay, now we're going to wrap it up.
Yeah.
And just do it later. And then, like, because of how the show sort of is, like, it's very like episodically driven, where each episode is something a little bit different, they can kind of affordably do that, because it still feels like, because that's what makes Rick and Morty feel like so unique, is that there's enough randomness that it still feels like an episodic cartoon adventure, but then there's still enough structure, especially in later on seasons, where they keep going back to previous ideas and previous like plot points.
See, so that's exactly where I'm about to go to, because that is the thing that I think. God, I'm going to sound like such a condescending person, but like, the average like pleb, like I just watch the TV show, hoo funny colors kind of like person who doesn't think about narrative and story in that much technical detail as I do most of the time. Mm-hmm. And I hate that I do it, but I do it anyways. Yeah. Is that one of the things that a lot of people who end up wandering don't do, is they don't actually go back and either read or consume their own media.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
and so I should know his name, but I don't know his name. But the author of Death Note, what he basically, I consider it half satirical, but what he did was he introduced this arc about how to make yourself look super smart, right? Okay. So basically what happens is when you're wandering, right, and you kind of, put together the plot or story however you want to, and then you either forget a character for a little bit because you're wandering. Oops, this character got sidelined for a little bit, right? Mm-hmm. And then when you reread it yourself as the author, right, you might think, oh, what was that character doing at that time? And so now you can make this callback to something forever ago that made it look like you were foreshadowing something, or it made the story more cohesive and more complete.
I'm going to bring up D&D again, because that's exactly what I do when I write my stories. I will write like a small little mini adventure or something like that, and I won't, and I'll just write it up and I'll bring it up to we'll introduce the player characters, whether it's a fight scene or like, just a small little like town arc where they're introducing some sort of character, and then I won't bring it up until later on that, like, maybe like, and then it will mean nothing then. but then 5 sessions later, 10 sessions later, I'm thinking like, I want to bring something back up again to make it all concise. Because that's how you make a world, right? You don't just throw, like, yeah, sure, there's probably going to be like throwaway NPCs, so to speak. Like, people that just show up one time and you never see them again, right? But then to make it feel like it's an actual world, you want them to sometimes reoccur again and actually have physical, fleshed out traits, I guess, that can happen later on in the future, right? Which is why I think a couple times much of my players said like, Zach, how did you plan this out well before? And I'm like, I didn't.
Yeah, of course not.
I didn't. Like, what happened was, like, someone was saying like, Zach, did you have this plan all the way from the start? I'm like, I was like, yeah, I did.
Yeah, how you sound 500 IQ, a million head, like at the same time,
and
right?
Because what happened is, especially with D&D, is like the players will say something, and then I'll be like, "Ooh, that sounds like a good idea," and I'll write it down off to the side and save it for later. And then all of a sudden, it's like that's what actually happens, or it's like it's really cool how it ties into the story because I just thought about it later, right? Like I had like an overarching of like how the story is mostly going to progress, but with like major points, but I just kind of left everything in between blank.
Yeah, so that's another thing that like the author talks about as like, or at least kind of like explores, at least indirectly, because it's been so long since I've read it. Okay. But the idea that you can adapt and grow with your audience is very interesting.
Yeah.
Right? And because manga is weekly serialization most of the time.
Yeah.
Right? And so every week, you're like nose to the grindstone to try to draw it out. But you also have to like plot out the story and everything. Yeah. And it's rare for you to have the time to really think about things very far in the future, and so that's why you end up being wandering architect a lot.
Yeah.
And so you have a situation where you're just like, I need to be adaptable to what's going on. Like for example, if you write a chapter that is about like a forest fire, for example.
Yeah.
And there was like a really massive forest fire in the real world somewhere, and like that's kind of in bad taste now if you kind of like talk about it in a bad sense,
yeah, it's
right?
one of those things like, it's just unfortunate timing. Something
yeah,
you can't
but
really
you still
control.
have to, no. By courtesy, you're still supposed to either delay the chapter or change it.
Got it.
All right. And so again, these are things that like what you're working with is sometimes like a living, breathing narrative.
Yeah.
And that's why it's really easy to kind of get lost, and especially as a reader too, right? And again, that's why I think it's somewhat satirical, or it's just like you kind of like read through it and you kind of enjoy it for like the 10 minutes or whatever it is for that week, and you kind of go back to it and you're just like, right, that happened. But you didn't just read it most of the time if you're reading it up to date.
Yeah.
And so there is a different experience from reading it week to week versus reading it all in one sitting, which is something, again, very different from like a live updating 1 week at a time show versus like a 3-hour movie, for example.
Yeah.
Right.
Like I guess that's true. Because I really stuck on your point about the whole growing with the audience and all that. It's one of the main things. Like, have you heard of the show House of the Dragon? With game, like
absolutely not. Like I said, I watch anime now.
That's true. Okay. Well, House of the Dragon, like you've heard of Game of Thrones at least, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So Game of Thrones had a spin-off series that was basically like a quote unquote prequel, but it's not called House of the Dragon. It's basically like the Targaryen dynasty before the events of Game of Thrones ever happened.
Sure.
So it's like every time in Game of Thrones you talked about how the Targaryen dynasty was always like the biggest dynasty in the world for the time that it was, and then that it was over, because the Game of Thrones starts off with the dynasty basically being ended. Right?
Sure, as a lot of those stories do.
Exactly. Yeah. So you're starting off the House of the Dragon series with the dynasty being in full force, right? And then my major gripe about the show, as good or as not good as it may be, I didn't love the show. It was good enough that it got good near the end, but the beginning I really didn't like, was because it had too many time skips. They had, and like not like 6 months, 4 months, anything like that. There was one that was like 8 months, because all of a sudden went from a person being like announcing that they're being wedded to them having the baby with their new husband.
I see.
And then a 4-year time skip that was like, was it 4? Yeah, it was a 4-year time. Or no, it was even more than that. So it was even more than that, because it was basically like they went from teenagers or young adults into full-on adults with like 2 or 3 kids. I'm like, I understand that that's probably where the book, because it was originally based on the book, came from. But like, you're making your own show. Like, put something in between, because I feel like I'm just watching 2 different characters now.
So here's another question, and I'm saying this as like I'm very curious and it's kind of like a twofold kind of thing, so you kind of tackle it how you want. So you said it got good at the end. Well, define good. That's the first thing, because like my sense of good has to at least somewhat align, because there's good in the sense of it is good technically, but then there's just it's straight up enjoyable to watch, and I don't necessarily think that they are the same thing.
Okay.
And the other thing is that as someone who did a lot of writing past tense, right, is that writing for your medium is very important, and it's something that, shout out to Giguk, one of the Trash Taste boys,
Giguk, yeah.
right? So he recently put out a video, and we're dating this episode now by me saying this, but he recently put out an episode talking about how people complain about the manga is always better or whatever, or that the medium of anime doesn't necessarily need to just be very faithful for it to be good. Because again, that can be very strong technically or whatever, but the idea that anime as a medium is very different than how you read things in panel form like a manga.
Yep.
And so you can convert between like one singular panel into like a 5-minute scene, and now that 5-minute scene that wasn't in the manga at all technically, all right, is now the highlight of the show, the season, whatever, right?
Okay.
And that's just, again, kind of adapting to your medium, right?
Okay, so, and part of what I liked about the end of this series is because it was a lot, like, I think the main major gripe was just because of the time skips. It's because I didn't feel like I was growing or understanding what was going on with the characters, because all of a sudden, the characters change in personality drastically, all right? Like, all of a sudden, the characters that I grew with in the first 2-3 episodes are now completely different now, and now I have to adapt to what they may or may not be, right? And, like, I wish that they could have just done the first, like, they could have just put a little bit more of in-between points about what was going on so I can understand what the characters are kind of like now instead of having to relearn them all over again. The second point about why I like the last one is because I think that's when more things start to happen. Because the first 4 episodes, I mean, it's the first season, so I understand, right? It was really slow because it's kind of like building up with these new characters, right?
Pacing issues.
Exactly, right? Like, it's like with any show, right? And I think I was still kind of tilted because of how Game of Thrones ended in general. So I was like, I wasn't really giving it a fair shot. But then near the end, and also some of the writing and like the plot armor that was happening with some of the characters, I'm like, oh, this is so dumb, right? And also some of the decisions that were being made. Near the end, the decisions made more and more sense. And that's what I kind of liked about it. It was very concise, technical, because like I can feel like, yeah, I can see that character doing that specific thing. And like that's what created tension. That's what like, oh, this is very interesting what's going on, right? And how people were actually making physical mistakes. Because it's not like the way the show was portrayed at the beginning was that like the main character was like this know-it-all brat. And then by the end of it, she was actually very well thought out and had like reasonable ideas. I was like, oh yeah, she's making a lot more sense now, right? So I'm starting to connect more with them. And also I'm starting to really side with different people, right? Now, from the medium, so to speak, yes, definitely. Like, people will always say, especially with Game of Thrones, I keep using that, is that the books were always better than the show. Especially for the first four seasons.
The manga was better.
Exactly. Well, it's because they cut things out, right? And that's where a lot of like shows, I really don't like it when they take the source material and they just warp it way too much past that point. Because you're right,
There's adapting it to the medium, though, right?
Yeah, and also because I've heard about the complaints about some people have is that I'll use another show. I'll say Lord of the Rings is the best example.
Sure.
Okay, with Samuel Jackson. So they want to be entirely faithful to the books, but they realized that there was so much content in the books they had to cut certain things out. So they had to try and like maneuver their way around about what they're going to keep, what they're not going to keep, right? Whereas The Hobbit went in the other direction, where there was not enough content in the books to justify 3 movies. So they went all the way to the other side, and they just filled in random stuff in between. And so that's what can happen with anime, is that, like, yeah, you're right.
The filler episodes.
Yeah, exactly. Like filler episodes, or like things where
God.
It's overall somewhat easier for a show or an anime to take from the manga and bring it onto the screen. And the only creative parts about it is the stuff that you see that's in between the panels in the manga that you just need to fill in yourself visually. And that's where your own personal creativity comes in. My problem is usually when they take a medium, like I'd say, for example, I'll use I'll use The Witcher, for example, because The Witcher was kind of a hot topic recently. The Witcher, where they already have the books. They even have the game that had like won Game of the Year, and they still weren't faithful to the whole thing. Where all they really need to do was just convert what was happening in the game and what's happening in the books to TV, and then anything that's in between they can fill in with their own ideas or anything that they feel is a little bit off.
Did you watch that video that I mentioned from Giguk? Probably not.
No, probably not. I don't watch a lot. I watch more of their trash taste stuff, but I don't watch his actual
the individual
videos.
channels. Sure,
No.
So it's very interesting. I think you should watch it because like, and I'm saying this as like I'm a big fan of him personally because I like the way that he breaks down narrative in a way that is like technical enough that people go, yes, I understand, even though if you don't really know narrative, you're just like, I'll not understand anyways. But it's very entertaining and it highlights certain things very well. I like his style a lot. And he does talk about a lot of like points that I'm like, oh, that's a very interesting thing. It's good to know someone else is thinking about things in the same way I do, basically.
Yeah. And you know what? I think maybe it would be good to watch it. Because if I do read a little bit of manga every once in a while, like just like small panels either through YouTube videos or just actually on like the actual web page or whatever people find them. Like, yeah, there is stuff in between that could be missing that the anime needs to fill in. I think a good anime is one that fills it in really, really nicely.
So it's not necessarily just filling it in though, right? Because again, it's the idea that your medium is a little bit different.
Yeah.
Right? The big example he gives, and I'm going to like kind of probe your thoughts on it, is fight scenes in particular are very contentious, right? At least from a technical point of view, is very contentious.
Okay.
Because again, the pleb, like flashy color, he has a sword, right? You go like, wow, that fight scene was so cool, the choreography, this, the whatever that, right? And that becomes like a highlight. And
are you talking about in the manga or in the
anime?
In the anime. Okay.
Right. From a story point of view, though, you can just kind of say a fight happened, this person won. And now most of your bases are covered, and that technically isn't really a highlight of your narrative. But that's what different people focus on. And so now that's like focusing for your medium. Now there's also the idea that a fight scene in a manga is a couple of panels, right?
Okay.
And a lot of the times it can get to the point where it's like, holy crap, what the hell is happening? Because of like certain art styles in particular, right?
Yeah.
There's like, what the heck is happening? And so trying to decipher that and put that into something more coherent is why a lot of people enjoy that part in like an anime more so, even though on a technical point of view that's not the highlight that it should be, but that's what people enjoy because that's what the medium allows for, I guess.
Well, I think it's the reason why a lot of popular animes right now is a lot of like fighting animes or
that's just because
animes.
It's easy to follow when you're like, again, I just watch flashy color, or that guy like high jumped real cool, right?
Well,
like
it's the reason why My Hero Academia is so, I would say, somewhat popular right now.
So,
as well.
oh my god, I'm with Garnt or Gigok on this one. Like,
yeah,
My Hero is so overrated.
Yeah, no,
I
agree that. I was with
man.
it for a while, and then I kind of like dropped off.
I told you from the beginning that it wasn't that good, but you're like, no, Calvin, the anime was so good.
Dude, I dropped off after the freaking school festival arc. Oh my god, that was so freaking boring. Like, I just got so done after that point. And I know it gets better because, like, they have like all these new characters.
It does not.
Oh, really? It does
not? I will tell you, at least from my point of view, it does not. Oh god, okay, it's time for the My Hero Academia rant. All right,
and then I did want to talk about anime to some degree because that was the one thing that we said right before we were going to start this that we had a little bit of disagreement on. So let's hear My Hero Academia. Then I'm going to bring in like the whole TV show anime rant about anime discussion. About something.
This is where people will start to crucify me. All you normies, come after me. It's fine. My biggest issue with My Hero Academia, and to some extent it applies also to Attack on Titan, which people will also crucify me for.
I do like Attack on Titan very much. So
I will die on this hill that both of those shows are terrible. I will die on this hill.
So before you go, I will make my sense. I think My Hero Academia is a little overrated, yes, because I kind of got bored after one arc and I was like, yeah, nothing was really going on. Attack on Titan, I would say I like it very much. So as much as the story plot points and the Deus Ex Machina, the infinite, basically the object that helps solve everything in Attack on Titan can be a little bit hard to swallow.
The Golden MacGuffin.
Yeah, the Golden MacGuffin. That's what I was thinking about. It's a little bit hard to swallow because of how they solve certain things or how the plot sort of happens. I still very much enjoy how everything has accumulated.
Okay,
so you tell me your thoughts.
I'm going to say I like My Hero Academia enough that I'm still reading the manga.
Really?
All right. Okay. I will tell you that as a full disclosure.
Okay.
All right. That's why I think that's overrated. And if I had to say if it's good or not, I would lean on it's bad, but it's still enjoyable enough. That's what I mean by, on a technical point of view, it can be bad. On an enjoyable point of view, it can be enjoyable. Mm-hmm. They're not exactly the same, right? But I said it from the beginning that like after I watched the first season of Attack on Titan, that this show is going to be a giant train wreck. I knew just from watching that first season that the author, producer, whoever behind it just didn't know how to sort out a coherent enough story that it was going to be a train wreck. And everyone crucified me. It was like literally like that meme where it's just, what was it? What was it? Emperor's New Groove, where the guy just says something controversial and everyone has like a spear pointed at him. Like that was me for years on Attack on Titan. And I don't know. Okay, so we're also going to avoid spoilers.
Yeah.
Right. So, but do you know how it ends?
I believe.
Just say yes or no.
I think yes, because I believe my girlfriend spoiled it for me because she watched a video talking about the manga stuff, and I was like, "Don't watch that. You're just ruining the episode." And so I think I know the ultimate ending, like the ultimate point of where it ends, like how it's going to end.
Sure.
But I think everything leading up to it, I'm a little bit hazy on. Like I know a little bit here and there, but not enough.
So all I know is the first season and how it ended. Okay?
Okay.
There are a couple of like major points that came up because, you know, if you watch anime at all, so someone's going to crawl out the woodworks, Attack on Titan good. But like, so, okay. So the reason why, I'll start with My Hero Academia. It's easier to talk about why that is not as good. Okay? So on a straight up like creativity point of view, it is nothing particularly new or interesting. There's the power system people are born with. There's some dude who didn't have the power, i.e. Naruto, i.e. whoever, right?
The main protagonist.
The main protagonist doesn't have any powers. They're suddenly given powers from some like reason, and it turns out they're really good.
Yeah.
And then the story follows them trying to, you know, basically grow up, right?
Yeah.
So there's nothing creative on that point of view. And on the other hand, what I think the author does exceedingly well is he is really, really good at setting up scenarios. Okay. He is like the proverbial hype man, where like he will always introduce something very interesting and very cool that can build hype, but the execution becomes very poor for two reasons. One, it is like you can tell he's a little bit more of a wanderer than an architect, because he will consistently bring up major new characters that will just disappear or are not relevant.
That's true.
Right? He is someone that will like hype up, oh, it's the big three, and the big three have come back, and they've hyped up, oh, there's that other school, you know, UA and the other one, right? But then what the hell happened to the other school now, right? And then it got to the point where there's such a huge list of characters, you're just like, I don't remember who's who anymore. Yeah. Right? So that's my first complaint about him as an author, right? That he just isn't, he's too wanderer, right? Okay, yeah. He's not very good at delivering. Now, this is where I think the anime, if you watch the anime of My Hero Academia, it is a significantly better experience than the manga, because he suffers from what I talked about, where some of the panels are like, what the hell is going on? And the weekly kind of like, I read it every week, because he jumps too much from one scene of a battle or like an arc to another very, very quickly, and you're just like, oh crap, where am I on the timeline now?
Got it, yeah.
Right? And so it becomes, the execution of how these characters and the hype kind of plays out becomes very poor, because you're just like, wait, what happened again? Where am I in the timeline? Did this? Because like, for example, they'll run up to a certain point and like a character will be like on their deathbed or something, and they'll suddenly flash to like the other useless students that no one cares about, and now they have this like side plot for like 3 weeks.
You know, that is,
and you come back to like the original guy who's dying and just like, wait, hold on, what happened?
Yeah. That's how I felt when I talked about Game of Thrones, like House of Dragons. Like, it's just too many time skips between different things. I heard that's a very also similar complaint with Rings of Power, but I never watched Rings of Power, so I don't care as much. Yes, continue.
But those are my two main complaints about My Hero Academia. As a whole, it is still very enjoyable. It has its own comedic moments, and I mean, the way things live and die in like popular culture nowadays, how memeable things are, right? And there's so many interesting memes and fun memes that can come out of like the art style and like the premise of the show, right? Yeah. Like the big three, I remember it so well because it lived on in meme form. Yeah. Everyone says this is like the big three of this or the big three of that, right? It's like this meme, that meme. Right. And like the All Might scene where he points to Midoriya and goes like, "You're next," right? Like there's so many fun memes that can come out of the show that like it's still enjoyable. But on like a technical point of view, especially since I'm reading the manga, I don't have time to like watch all the show at this point. Screw it, right? I can read 10 minutes or like half an hour every few weeks kind of thing. That's fine, right?
Yeah.
But it suffers a lot from execution. So I think he's too much of a wanderer. Now, Attack on Titan, that's a whole other rant, man.
Okay,
Holy crap.
So maybe we'll save Attack on Titan for a specific episode then, because I think we're about halfway through, and I do want to have I want to get some other probing of you about some other TV show stuff. I know we started off with TV shows and we went right into anime, which is fine because that's what I was kind of planning to go towards anyway. But yeah, I don't know. I think I agree with most of you with My Hero Academia. I think at some point
most people don't realize that until I bring it up, though.
Yeah, well, because like
they get caught in the hype.
I just also start watching. I was like, man, I just don't have any reason to watch it that much anymore. I just don't have any need to. And then again, I don't watch a lot of TV shows in general anymore because I find that sometimes. I find most of the time, unless it's like a really enjoyable TV show, I'll sit down and watch it. I also have to watch it with my partner as well, it's hard to find a TV show that we can both watch that we both like. But sometimes I recommend something that she ends up liking anyway, or she recommends something that I end up liking anyway. And Attack on Titan is actually one of those few things where I started showing her a couple, and then she binge watched the entire series. Dude, she really likes it. I think when we go off the mic and we talk to her about it, I think you and her are gonna have some very choice words about how Attack on Titan is.
Sure.
So with My Hero Academia, I think I agree with most of what you said. I think that's probably one of the reasons why I didn't like it. I think my problem is that there's a lot of like just down time in between major story arcs, like way too much filler that I thought was not issue. Like I feel like they could have just skipped. It's the same thing with what was it?
Do you know
Bleach.
what comedic relief is?
Huh?
Do you know what comedic relief is?
Yeah. The idea is like you want to have the downtime intention between the two, right? But I didn't watch My Hero Academia for the comedic relief, so to speak. And the downtime between My Hero Academia for certain arcs wasn't as long as that stupid festival arc. That was my major concern.
True. Okay.
That was my main thing. Because here's the thing. I remember the comedic relief from when they went to the training camp, right? That was the comedic relief. I'm like, that's fine. But that stupid festival arc was just so long and boring. I was like, oh, guys, I can't take this. This is just too much for me. So because I back in university, I watched the entirety of Bleach, filler arc and everything.
Oh God!
Yeah.
Why did you do that to yourself?
Because I made a commitment to this. It was the same reason why I committed myself to watch all of Dragon Ball, not Dragon Ball Z, Dragon Ball, Dragon Ball Z, then Dragon Ball GT, and then Dragon Ball Super.
Oh God!
Yeah,
You're
and
not
Kai. I didn't watch any of the Kai stuff, which is the shortened part of it. No, I watched the full thing, so I got the full experience, right? So and in between there, episodes were really drawn out, right? And then with Bleach, it was the same. They had the filler arcs in between, but at least they had a somewhat story. Right? You understood that it was a filler arc when it came up, right? But with My Hero Academia, when they just have the downtime 10, 20 episodes, something like that, I was like, guys, this is
so on a technical point of view. So I'm going to take another tangent. This could be a long episode. It's fine. Don't worry about it. Right? This is just a very interesting conversation.
Yeah.
So the thing is, there's one other manga that I read a lot, and then I ran out of time. I stopped reading it, but I will definitely go back to it. And I think an anime got announced for it at some point in the future. I don't know the full English name of it, but I refer it to as Yozakura Family. And functionally, it is nothing particularly creative or anything. Basically, there's this dude who really likes this girl. Turns out this girl is from a family of spies, and so
okay.
Cue the Spy X Family. No, it's not quite that direction, but it's surprisingly close for certain parts of it. Okay. Because what it does very, very well is it builds up action scenes of this is a spy mission or whatever. There's this overarching evil villain, all that stuff that they're going through. Great. All right, I'm trying not to spoil it, right?
Okay, yeah.
The thing they do exceedingly well, though, is that it's based on the idea of a family. That's why it's called Yozakura Family, right? There are all these siblings that have their own very quirky personalities and stuff, and but they're also just exceedingly good spies. Yeah. And it's their interactions that mesh well during these comedic relief chapters that I think the author does exceedingly well. It's so good because it has that right amount of this is very much in line with that character and showing what this character is like, and it makes them more endearing for in the middle for when, wow, this guy's dying. It's serious, right? Okay. And why they care so much for each other and all that, right? Mm-hmm. To be fair, it is literally 20 chapters of this arc and then one chapter comedic relief, and they go back to it. Right? Yeah, and so it is very good on a technical point of view to endear your characters, show a bit more about them, how they interact with each other, and build those soft moments so that when there's serious moments, they hit harder.
Oh, yeah, no, and I completely agree.
But yeah, My Hero sometimes suffers with pacing too. So.
Yeah, exactly. It's the same thing when I watched Dragon Ball Z when it was between the Cell arc and the Buu Majin arc, right? Where Gohan's going to school, right? And the idea of it is that like
It has to be timed well, though. That's why it's usually at the end of an arc and not in the middle somewhere.
well, that's what I mean, right? Like it was I can't remember when that stupid festival arc happened, but I think it was like in the middle of something. I was like, what the hell am I watching right now, right? And even with Bleach, like Bleach was really bad for it. Do you know when the filler arcs
So
happened?
I watched every single episode of Bleach as well, but that was when I was an edgy teenager and I had nothing better to do.
Oh, okay.
So
The best filler arc that happened for Bleach was when it was literally between the Soul Society arc with Aizen and the God damn, why am I forgetting the name? Where the Hollows live. What's that place called?
Hueco Mundo. And I'm going to absolutely butcher that pronunciation, but that's fine.
It's Hueco Mundo.
Because it's Spanish, I believe.
It's all Spanish, right?
Yeah.
So in between those two, it's crazy. Like Soul Society, I forget what Soul Society was based off of. Hueco Mundo is Spanish and a whole bunch of Spanish names and such. And then the one that's now happening, the 1,000-Year Blood War, right? That's all German stuff now. So anyways, so what I was going to get at was like the best filler arc was in between the Soul Society arc and the Hueco Mundo arc, because it was a perfect timing. It makes sense because there's nothing going on. So they just put in this random, like, I think it was called like the Bounce arc.
God, the Bound arc got so much controversy though.
Why though? I kind of liked it. I kind of liked it to some extent because it actually made sense with this. It made sense that it just happened in between the story, and it was kind of just a fun arc to follow along with. But before you talk about, maybe we won't talk about that too much, but the biggest point is that all of a sudden they're in the middle of the Hueco Mundo arc, and they just cut to filler.
I remember that,
like,
yeah.
What?
God, that was so dumb. That was so dumb. It was like we're all like trapped in the prison, or he means like in a prison cell or something, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, gotta leave. There's another captain or something. Like, let's go.
It's not how they leave. It's like all of a sudden I remember specifically. I cut to the next episode because I have it all like downloaded, right? And I go to that episode, and all of a sudden it's a time. It's a clock, and it says, we're going to go tell another story in the meantime. I'm like, oh my God, you guys are really cutting to filler in the middle of this because you guys ran out of time? Oh my God. Because it's not like Full Metal Alchemist or Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. Have you ever watched either of them?
Yes, I have.
You want to watch both of them?
I've watched both of them.
Okay,
yes.
So it's not like Full Metal Alchemist where you can tell where they kind of ran, they stopped going away from the manga because it ran out, because the manga was too, they couldn't catch up. So they started making their own stuff. And then they went back with Brotherhood to redo it all. They didn't do a filler. They just kind of ended the series and just made a new one anyway, right? So it wasn't like that. Bleach just stopped it halfway and then just continued on anyway. I'm like, oh my God, guys.
Yeah.
It was real. So what I'm going to get at about all this. So we're talking about anime right now. We're from Canada. Right? Or at least either way. We're from Canada.
We're Canadian, eh?
We're Canadian, eh? Yes. So back when we were young, we had the whole anime nights, right? Anime was shown at nights on like Friday or something like that. Like Dragon Ball Z. I remember I tried to watch Dragon Ball Z a couple times.
So I remember Dragon Ball airing at 8:30 p.m. every single night.
Yeah.
When I was young. And at 8:30 specifically, because when I was that young and I was watching it, my bedtime was 9 o'clock. So it was like, oh crap, if I watch this episode because I want to, I have like 5 minutes to get everything going and get into bed before my parents yell at me.
Yeah, exactly. So you have all that time right now. And I think the reason why it was happening at night, especially because it was on YTV or something like that.
I think so, yeah.
Right? Is because it wasn't that popular. So basically the small Canadian television service bought up the rights to do some dubs and such and aired on Friday, aired on the nights, right? And then Crunchyroll took all that away because it got more and more popular. So that's what I was talking about before. It's like, I think anime is much more popular than any other Western TV service show that is out today.
So I disagree in the sense that anime is very broad, and most people who watch stuff, right, they still have a lot of preconceived notions of what anime is, and that, my friend, is a rant that we do not have time to go down. Okay. Holy crap, we do not.
Well, I think whenever I watch a show that's produced or mainly done up in the Western, whether it's America, Canada, whatever, North American part of the world, right? Maybe even Europe as well, parts of Europe as well.
It's Western. Continue.
Right? We'll call it Western world, okay? I think a lot of shows suffer from lack of creativity, lack of ideas, and lack of ability to draw in an audience than anime does on a whole scale.
You say that, but there are legitimately people who have been watching anime for a while who say the exact same thing. Where like the fact that anime currently is very repetitive and the seasonal shows aren't particularly innovative. It's like, oh, this is this season's action, it's this season's silly rom-com, it's this season's this or whatever, or this season's like token sports anime or whatever, right?
Okay.
And so it's the same thing of like, it's hard to, I mean, you hit a point where you don't watch anime for it being good anymore. You watch it just because it's enjoyable.
Well, I think...
Right? It's the same idea, right? Where like you just kind of like, well, you can't really draw the same kind of anymore, so that's why you that.
Well, I think it's more based on like how memorable it is. I don't think it's like, listen.
Well, it's the extremes,
anime,
right?
And I think all shows and all genres of shows suffer from the idea of that you have to dig through the sludge to get to the diamond. All right?
Yeah.
Like you have to dig through the multiple isekais, and everyone know what an isekai is.
And isekai
right?
isn't necessarily bad. Continue.
Yeah, it's not necessarily bad. Like I like some isekais, right? Like I like Overlord, and I want to get into Shield Hero, but I haven't just gotten time for it.
Oh god, Shield Hero is so bad. It's
really?
Oh god.
Really? Is it? I heard it was okay. Okay, we'll talk about it later. Then. Okay. Anyways, so we talk. You have to dig through those ones to find the Overlord, to find the first season of Sword Art Online.
Right? Maybe like the first 6 episodes.
Exactly, right? You gotta dig through. And the same thing with a lot of shows in Western world. Like you have to dig through your Rings of Power, your She-Hulks, your like multiple your I don't know, Obi-Wan ones, like the ones that didn't do too well, to find your really good ones, like the first season of Mandalorian, like Breaking Bad, like Better Call Saul.
Yeah, like I don't disagree with you that there's like gold in there somewhere and that it's a good medium. I love it for a reason. That's why I watch it more. But to say that it is more popular or like more mainstream, I guess, or more people want to watch versus like, again, I'll get more Western media. I think that's completely disingenuous for like the Western audience.
That like I'm just looking from a purely merchandise standpoint of like when I go out and see things.
I'm going to tell you this straight up, and this is like not great, but there's a lot of fan service in anime that like you'd be hard pressed to like convince a mainstream to kind of look past.
What do you mean by that? Like,
I mean, there's multiple definitions of plot in the anime world, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
So it's hard for something that has less, I guess, traditional Western mainstream appeal, that because there's some extreme tropey scenes that are pure fan service that I have a hard time believing will, like, I guess, cross over the mainstream boundary very well. Like, that's why there's all these memes and jokes about how like anime when you're watching by yourself is just like, they're just like playing baseball or whatever, right?
Okay.
And then anime when your parents walk in, it is always like the shower scene or like the beach scene or something. Like, so like there's those tropey scenes that are very fan servicey, and that's what people latch onto very quickly. And this is something that I had a conversation with believe it or not, Bella, if you remember Bella,
yeah, sure.
Where she could never get into anime. She said she couldn't. Really? And that was where, because she said, there's all these tropes and stuff, right? Like, sure, yeah, look past it a little bit, right? The thing about anime that makes it really, really good, in my opinion, is that as a medium, it has no real bounds. That's the reason why there's so many like extreme scenes that can be taken out of context that can be made fun of, right? Okay. It's because it has no bounds in what they're willing to put out, really. It lets you really explore certain things quite well and in quite a lot of detail, because the difference between like a lot of these seasonal animes and what people traditionally in Western kind of thing kind of like point out as like a cartoon is that cartoons are mostly targeted towards younger audiences, but that's not necessarily the case for anime. The one thing that I always go back to and I say it's really good, and why I think it's like one of my number one recommendations and why it has some mainstream appeal is Haikyuu, because there is less fan service in that, and it is more very believable, and it just explores different characters and themes that in an animated form you can do very well, versus like anything else that it is just. It's very clear what it's targeting towards, as it's not necessarily young kids, and it goes through different themes and stuff.
Yeah. Well, I think we're starting to move away from that. I think back in like the early 2000s and like maybe even like 2010s, we were still kind of in that mindset of like, cartoons are still very much for kids and such, like Looney Tunes, Gravity Falls, like Family Channel stuff, right? But you see now a lot of adult adult-based cartoons are coming out. Castlevania, The Boys Diabolical was one from Amazon. Invincible. Have you seen Invincible? Invincible is a really good show from Amazon Prime. It's Legend of Vox Machina. Like, there's so many adult. Rick and Morty is the best one. I think Rick and Morty is kind of like what.
God, maybe we shouldn't call them adult videos.
No, it's
or adult series.
No, it's called adult cartoons. That's what it's technically called, right?
Sure,
sure. Like, you know, that was kind of what Futurama, Family Guy, and American Dad sort of somewhat paved the way for.
Yeah.
But they just did it in a very sitcom-y way because, you know, it was like, oh, we're still a cartoon, we got to make it funny, right? But now you get to very serious ones. Like, I think one of the, probably, I want to say one of the first, like, you know, serious American cartoon ones was probably either Samurai Jack when it was first on as a kid's cartoon. Sure. And then, because they knew... Do you know like why Samurai Jack had so many robots in the first couple seasons?
No, actually.
It's because it was marketed towards kids and they couldn't show blood or anything like that. So they said, okay, we're going to make all of our enemies robots. And then they had these most gruesome scenes with the robots. But I think the original idea was that they wanted to have actual humans with it. But they couldn't do it because they can't show humans like that on a kid's show. So that's why when Samurai Jack came back for the fifth and final season, it was all blood and gore because it was all on Adult Swim. So they were able to get away with it because of that. Because that's what people wanted. Right? At the time, Samurai Jack was a more adult-based show that had some themes of that, right? You know, think about it, like a samurai who goes back in time, goes into the future, loses his family, and now has to live in this world and has to deal with like these very like emotional and physical restraints of like, you know, living in this new time world. And they just couldn't use it to its full extent because it was pulled back because it's on a kids network. And then when it got finished and then it came back for the fifth season, they said, okay, we're not going to pull any stops. We're going to go full adult themed on this. And I think that's what the shift is happening, is that they're not seeing adult, like, you know, there's still going to be cartoons for kids.
I definitely think it's like confirmation bias in the sense of what you see in front of you right now. It's like small drop in like the big scene. I genuinely think it's very, very hard for you to say, like, if you pulled 100 people like off the street right now, I do not think more than 50 of them would say I watch more anime than like Western media.
Oh, yeah, sure, but you can't deny that. Like, it's
growing. I don't deny it.
You know, like, the fact that I think...
But this is also me being arrogant and going like, oh, you plebs, you don't know what good narrative or good anime is.
Well, listen, like, it's at least the fact that people are at least talking about it, right? Because, like, you know, that's how I started, right? It's like, I only knew about anime through actually only through really Dragon Ball Z, essentially.
Dude, the big three and Dragon Ball, like, were like and I guess Pokemon, were like the only anime that people knew until I was like 20.
And some people didn't even realize that Pokemon was like technically anime. It was always just like...
Not even technically, it is an anime.
Yeah, either way, like, they only knew it through Pokemon, and they didn't realize that there was like, you know, a Japanese version and like the different, and how much they changed. Like Yu-Gi-Oh was the biggest offender of that, remember? With how 4Kids centered so many things about it. Yeah. So like
the finger guns. Oh, I love that.
The finger guns, the artwork and everything, right? And I think it just had I think the biggest example is in the US they have this called like in New York they have like the JC Penney parade, like Santa Claus parade essentially.
Yeah.
Right? They now have an inflatable Goku that they add on every year. It's huge. It's crazy, right? Like it's... And like, you know, we see it everywhere when we go down.
But I still think that as long as, and again, this is just me being maybe somewhat elitist, but I still think that as long as you cling on to Dragon Ball, the big three, the big three are like Bleach, Naruto, and One Piece, and Pokemon, as long as you associate these five as like your, like, I guess, anime for the masses, right? As long as that is involved, I genuinely do not think it is mainstream still.
Really?
Yeah, because that is like... That is tip of the iceberg, you know? It's not quite the same.
I don't know. I still think like you go around, I think you go into any store, you see a lot of My Hero Academia, Hunter x Hunter, you see
that's also just like a virtue of like the area that we're in, right? Mm-hmm. So it's
you know, maybe that's more true to anything that you just said. I think that's like because we lived in a more centralized area, high population density, like, you know, a lot of...
and very multicultural.
Yeah, very multicultural. Maybe that's probably the reason why. Yeah, it's the same reason, like, you know, if you go like 50 kilometers or 200 kilometers up north, you're not going to hit any of that, right? But or like, you know, it's going to be very hard pressed to find it. But you can't deny it's like, you know, it's
growing. I will not say it's growing, but I will. And this is a hill I will die on, that as of the moment that we're recording this, there is no way that anime is more popular in the Western like thing than Western media. That literally, I will die on that hill. There is no way.
You can't deny that though, that it's changed the way that Western media interprets cartoons now. No, it does animation now.
Okay, I will say this being again, elitist and a little bit mean. I think they're just trying to capitalize on a money-making opportunity more than anything.
I think it's the creative. I think the problem is that the big executives, so to speak, right, or the people who made the final decisions on your shows being aired or not, were always tuned in on the idea that cartoons were Looney Tunes, whereas like Looney Tunes, your recesses, your
SpongeBob's, whatever,
SpongeBob's and everything, right?
Yeah.
And then the reason why it changed is because they saw how anime has now been more popular. They say, okay, well, people don't want their SpongeBob's anymore. Like, some people do want their SpongeBob's, sorry. That's still a market that you got to do for kids. But it's like, well, now adults want these. They are okay with watching cartoons, so to speak, cartoons, animated shows, right, that have a more mature theme to it. And they realize, like, okay, well, if the story that we want to tell invokes that, let's just do it that way instead of doing it live action, right? Like, yeah, I'll have it's similar challenges, but now you don't have to. There's certain, it's just a different way of how you want to style it. So I think it's given North America a lot more freedom to explore animation to tell their stories rather than going to live action. And I think anime has really helped out with a lot of that. And
I won't deny that, but still, like, oh my God, I'm bringing this back to like programming terms. I think the cap of like, there's like the big O notation is basically how you define how things react in like when you get a lot of like data, a lot of like computations input, whatever, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think the cap currently, like if I had to take a guess of like where the popularity lies, I still don't think it is higher than traditional Western entertainment, Western media right now.
Dude,
is it on a growing path? Yes. But if you to stop me right now and say that, like I could not. I will die on that hill.
I don't know,
right
man.
now.
We don't have a third person
to break the tie,
to pull up facts right now and tell us, like, because how often do you hear about like mainstream? Like, when I say mainstream shows, I mean like on like things like CTV, on HBO, or on I don't know, like CW, I guess, is another thing. Like, how often do you hear about those shows and how popular or unpopular they are? Like, I always hear about those shows basically.
All right, I'm gonna hit you with this, Zach.
Okay.
So, Spy X Family right now is probably one of like the most universally loved anime airing right now. Okay. If you ask anyone who watches anime or has anything to do with anime in their like hobby list at all right now, they would have heard of it and or probably watching it, to be honest.
Yeah.
Now, if I asked 100 people right now what Spy X Family is, and if they're watching it, I do not think you would hit like more than 50 out of 100 people.
I don't know.
I do not think so.
In where we are right now, the location we are right now, if we were to walk outside or are you talking about, like, where exactly are you pulling this, right?
See, that's okay. I can cheat and go like, somewhere in the Midwest states, right? It's like, well, what is this anime, right? Like,
I guess, if we're pulling, like, if we're assuming the population that you're taking this basis on is like the entire population of Canada, then yes, I would probably agree with you on that, right?
Yeah.
But I would still say that, like, in a lot of major parts of the area where a lot of like the higher density is, I would say you maybe get 50%, maybe. I would imagine, because I think the issue is that even though a lot of the anime stories, as you say, are a lot of garbage, right? The ones that peer through do a lot better than the ones that, quote unquote, peer through in Western media. Like, if there's a good show in Western media, it's all right? Like, sure.
Example,
right? Like,
the example I'll give is How I Met Your Mother. It's all right.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like, The Office, I think, was also a fairly good show. I didn't watch all of it, but man, it just went on for so long, man. It was good, and because of like how it kind of started a lot of genres and such. But what was I going to go on? I was basically going to mention that a lot of the animes that peer through are really, really good. Like if you watch it, like I was kind of against Spy Family when I first thought about it. When either I think it was you or my girlfriend brought it up. I was like, I don't know. It's kind of, and then I started liking it a little bit more. I liked it a lot more. But then I'll give it a general example. My girlfriend wanted to watch Dahmer, so it's it's a theatrical documentary of Jeffrey Dahmer, played by Evan Peters, on Netflix. And even though it was gaining a lot of traction and gaining a lot of hype around it, I kind of liked it. It was okay. It wasn't like if I scrolled past it and just saw it, I probably still wouldn't have watched it. And that's what I mean. Like, even though as popularized as it may have been when it came out, it's not as popular as the most popular anime that came out.
I still think that's selection bias in who you're talking to, but we'll dial it back one more. We'll dial my example back one more then. All right. So let's say, okay, so this is a couple seasons ago.
Okay.
All right. And I think this sums up like quintessentially why anime is such an interesting medium to tell themes and talk about stories. All right. God, this is gonna make my example really bad if you know this. Okay. So have you heard of the series Trash Tier Tomazaki-kun?
No, I'm not.
So
let's
there's a whole like Japanese name to it. I'm like butchering it for sure. But the premise is that there is someone who's like a top video game player in Japan. Okay. He's a high schooler.
Yeah.
He's playing not Smash. It's basically Smash. All right. Let's be real. All the animations are them playing Smash.
Got it.
Right. And it's him talking about having the competitive mindset of how to improve and how to be really good at this game. But he is, as you would expect of like a really good video game player who just devotes all his time to playing games, is he's so socially terrible.
Okay.
And so what happens is the number 2 player in Japan reaches out and goes, hey, let's meet up. All right. And he goes, sure, I guess. Mm-hmm. Turns out it's this very pretty girl.
Oh, okay.
And she's just like, I can't believe the number 1 player in Japan with this proper competitive mindset doesn't know how to improve themselves. And she said that what she did was that, again, apply the competitive mindset to how to be good at social situations.
Okay.
Right. And so she's coaching him to do that as well, to like slowly level up his like social ability.
Yeah.
Right. And again, very, very good series for talking about competitive mindset and the approach to things and like exploring themes of like social ability and whatever. Very good series. Diamond in the rough for sure. I guarantee you that you didn't hear about it, right?
No,
nobody will know about this, right? And so there's a whole bunch of really good shows. That's why I have a hard time believing that like it is something that people are like, wow, the majority of people are watching more anime. I do not believe that, because even just gems like this, right, that are good shows, right, that have like a very interesting anime spin to it. Because of course the number 2 player has to be this very pretty girl, right? Of course, right? And they have this like flirty, coachy relationship and all of that, and all that. Like, of course, right? But there's like anime elements to it that, again, I have a hard time believing that can translate to the mainstream that well.
I don't know. I think there is probably stuff like that because of how far disconnected North America and Japan can be in terms of both cultural, like I just talk about
but I mean, it's just if you go to Japan, right, you ask people like who's watching Breaking Bad over there, there's like, I don't know what the fuck. So
that's what I mean. Like this is what I mean. The whole take that I'm trying to get at is that I think Western shows, or base shows at least, are never as good as like the best Western show. And I won't use Breaking Bad. I think Breaking Bad is like a very unique example, because Breaking Bad is not like, I was going to talk about this a bit, was that Breaking Bad is not an example like How I Met Your Mother, like Dragon Ball, or like Bleach, where the author or the director had a very specific idea of where it was going to go and wanted it to end, but then the studios and the money that it kept breaking didn't allow it to end, so they just kept going. Like, I think Dragon Ball Z should have ended after the Cell arc. It was very clearly meant to end after the Cell arc.
That happens in anime too, right? Remember Bleach was supposed to end after like their first arc?
Exactly, right? So that's what I mean. But Breaking Bad ended after 5 seasons. Right? And that's it. And then they created a movie, and then they created a spin-off series. But they didn't continue Breaking Bad itself, which I thought was great, because like Breaking Bad is a phenomenal show. It's a little slow during the first season, but it really does pick up. So I think like major shows like that, like whenever we hear like a major show in Western media that comes out, it doesn't sparkle, or it doesn't resonate as much as like a major Japanese show that comes out. So I think like when
it's the uniqueness factor of it more than anything at this point.
You think the uniqueness of how the anime is versus the uniqueness of, because I think Western media,
it's the uniqueness of, like, again, why I think I appreciate anime so well is because there's no bounds on what content it can bring up, right?
Yeah.
Like I have a hard time believing that if I pitch the exact same show, right, like the Trash Tier thing, right, to a major network, and hey, let's do like a live action of it, for example. God, a live action anime is cursed.
As much as I like anime,
like it's just not going to happen, right?
Freaking anime that goes live action is always terrible.
It's always terrible because they don't have the right cinematographers and stuff. The plot can be perfectly faithful and exactly the same, but like the cinematography and like the way that you can exaggerate certain expressions and stuff in like art form, it's just not the same.
Did you ever watch Dragon Ball Evolution?
I refuse. I refuse.
Dude, I watched it in the theaters.
Jesus Christ.
And I also watched it wasn't a North American, it wasn't an anime. It wasn't an anime, it was Avatar Last Airbender,
Oh
right?
God,
The
yeah, I
North
refuse
American
as well. Jesus Christ.
Yeah,
Look what they did to my boys.
oh my God, dude. It was so bad. Like, it looked like the
God.
actors were so bad.
Oh, God.
But anyway, that's going to be, I want to do a movie one. So I know I talked about movies a bit, but like I want to do a whole movies episode as well. So I think maybe we have the same, maybe we'll devolve into the same talking points with movies as well.
Maybe.
But I think anime is going to be just as bad. But I think my main gripe about Western media and anime in general is that when an anime adapts something, sometimes it'll go really hard on like it's adapting everything too closely and it doesn't work in an anime format. It's what you're kind of talking about with Giguk.
Yeah.
With what he was talking about. And then my problem with Western media is that it doesn't adapt hard enough. Like basically they take an existing IP or idea and the show, the executives, whoever say, everyone wants this, we're going to do this. And then the writer's like, oh, well, I don't want to do that. I literally heard a quote from either The Witcher or from a different producer setting where they said that if the producers or whoever's coming out to write the show has never heard of the material before, they will hire them before someone who has. Because then they don't have preconceived notions to adjust the character as it is. Because I'm like, that's so dumb. Because if you're adapting a pre-existing material, then you want to follow what the original material is, which is what anime does somewhat well. Whereas Western media doesn't do it nearly as well because there's so many like egos in the way rather than Japan. It's because I just said Japan, there's just so much that has to get outputted. There's no time to come up with your own stuff. You're just always copying whatever's on the manga side.
Yeah, there's a lot more that goes into it for sure. And again, I know this because I read Bakuman. Again, there's so much of that manga taught me that I'm like, God damn, that's a good manga.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, like, is there any manga that has that when it got adapted to anime, it wasn't faithful to the manga, and not because of like filler episodes? Like, because that's the thing.
Rarely. Okay, so here's the thing that happened more in the past when they wanted like the super long running shows for whatever reason. Okay. But now that things are trending more to like seasonal, like 12 episodes at a time, 13 episodes at a time kind of thing. It is a lot rarer for that to happen. Mm-hmm. I think that's just because of like a change in how they want to do their production.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So it's, I mean, you only have 12 episodes and typically you don't end up saying, I want to have an anime adaptation of 3 chapters. So I mean, usually there's enough runtime already so that they just pick from it. Like another very, very good example is Kaguya-sama, Love is War.
Okay.
Have you heard of it?
No.
Again, another super popular, very good, very anime.
As much as I like TV shows and such, I like talking about it sometimes, I really don't watch a lot of it. Like, even a lot of North American stuff, I don't watch. Like I said, I wouldn't have found out about this popular one called Dahmer if my girlfriend didn't tell me about it.
Anyways, all right, the thing about it is it's basically, so the way the episodes work is they take 2 scenes that are functionally like a chapter or 2 out of this like 100-odd chapter thing because there's not really a fully linear plot to it. Okay. It's kind of like Phineas and Ferb where it's kind of episodic, but there's like kind of like an underlying theme. Anyways, that's not important. Just try not to spoil it.
Okay.
The idea is that they jump back and forth a lot and they pick what makes for a good anime out of it.
Okay.
Right. And so that's the example that I'll give of it's rare for them to like say, oh, I filler, like I won't be faithful because they just need to have enough material before they can put something together in 12 episodes anyways. Mm-hmm. Right. And so they definitely moved away from the idea of like being less faithful because I mean, there's no room for it at this point.
Well, I think it's a little bit of like that. And I think it's this idea that if I'm a writer, like, I think maybe we can talk about if we talk about careers at some point. It's like when you're a writer, right, or you're a producer or director, you want to make your own ideas come forward. But before you can do that, you got to follow along with someone else's ideas.
So also, by the way, when a mangaka gets an offer to like have their work adapted, they actually get functionally a right of veto because it's their IP. So if whatever script the studio comes up with, whatever the studio wants to put together, right. I believe it's also for like the anime itself because I know it's also for like it happens for like screenplays and like cosplay. It's basically they get the right to their own IP, right?
Yeah.
So they're allowed to say how it's being portrayed. And so if someone puts out something that's unfaithful and the original mangaka doesn't agree with, they can veto it and say we're not doing it, and that's end of story.
Wait, sorry, you're saying the manga
the original
artist?
author, the original author / artist, right? They get a veto on whatever the studio or whatever the IP
really?
stuff comes up with.
So what if the artist is either passed away or has no input on it whatsoever?
I don't know about the full legalities, but I do know that they have more say than in Western side, I'm sure.
See, now that's what I wish happened. I wish that someone was able to step in and say, yeah, you're messing up my art and not doing it. And it was kind of what happened with the whole Rings of Power talk about happening right now.
So we're running out of time, but I will say, I will end this on, there are 2 manga that you must read if you want to have a bit more of like an insight on this.
All right, Calvin's top 2 picks. Of
Top
what to
2
read
picks?
For next week.
No.
Next reading club.
Oh god. I think they're just good to give you an insight of like the system in the back for how manga works and how entertainment in general kind of works, right? And how there's a bunch of red tape and stuff you don't really think about and how stories are put together. So Bakuman for sure, it's really old by now. And Oshinoko. All right.
Okay.
It deals with the entertainment industry as a whole. As basically a psychological thriller, actually. But it talks a lot about idol culture, entertainment, and stuff like that. And it gives you a very, very good lens on what the entertainment industry may or may not be like.
Okay.
All right, without spoiling it.
Okay. So I know we're going to end it, but I will keep a note for the next episode because I want to continue this conversation and I want to lead it more in towards of like the difference between North American and Japanese ways of writing. Because I think those are the 2 main popular medias right now of going on. Like maybe
I don't think you want to generalize it as Japanese or Western so much as Western and Eastern.
Okay,
because there's a bunch of stuff that comes out of China, there's a bunch of stuff that comes out of Korea and stuff, right? And they have a similar style, but Korean manhwa and all that stuff are also very distinct in their own way. And we can, again, I'm a bit more knowledgeable about like the Eastern stuff than you are, and probably you're more with the Western stuff.
I want to have like that kind of conversation. I guess that's a better way to put it. Yeah. I was going a little bit more too direct into like Japanese anime and into like Western media, but I guess you're right. I guess it should be like West versus East in this case. So I wanted to talk about that. So maybe we'll hold off on that for maybe a second episode as well.
Yeah.
I think that's
this got heated.
Whatever. Go ahead. Well, I mean, like we, just to end off, like we talked about this before and saying how we weren't sure if we were gonna have to talk about it. I was like, no, I think there's a lot to talk about. I think it just depends on which way we steer. I think if we talked, I really still want to talk about like the idea of subscription services of like streaming and such versus like the way the old legacy media was versus like other means of
and I want to give my Attack on Titan rant so that like I can just put it out there.
Okay. We'll do a second episode for that. We'll make sure we put it in the doc. And you know what? I'm going to bring a second guest to make sure that you're overpowered in this case.
No, that's not fair. That's not fair.
Make sure I have enough backup for this. So that way maybe we get different perspectives, but I'll listen out to it. I think we have a mutual friend, Kay.
Sure.
Do you remember? I think you know him.
Yeah.
I think he also has the same opinion as you do, though.
Oh.
I think so. Last I checked.
Okay.
So you do have other people bringing it up as well.
All right. Anyways, I think that's all we have.
Yeah. Thank you for listening to our,
a heated anime discussion.
Anime/TV show discussion. I want to get more TV show. But I think that's just gonna be a second one. I gotta start writing down all of these episode ideas that we keep leaving off on to make sure we follow up on them. As you just talked about.
The Wanderer, right? We'll come back.
The Wanderer Architect. There we go. All right. Well, thank you everyone. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe. I'm Zach.
I'm Calvin.
And we will be sure to talk to you in the next one.
Yeah. Bye.